Okay, so I had something pretty profound, well, deeply meaningful to me happen the other day that I wanted to share with you guys. It's at the very least, if it's not something that you can relate to or have experienced yourself, then hopefully it'll be at least a lesson. It's a positive experience. It's one of those things in life that is the epitome of full circle. Like everything makes sense. You have answers. You um, get clarity about something. And this experience I had, I want to share with you guys. It happened the other day. So, firstly, I want to reference the video in the abuse series. I'm looking at my other device to try to figure out which video it is. It's the video entitled Let's Talk About Abuse, Part 20, My Cheerleading Coach. That's the title of the video, and it was I posted it on July 9th. So that being said, I tell the story of influential adults, positively influential adults. And in the next segment after that one, part 21, I talk about a experience I had with a band teacher at my school. And the story pertains to my young teenage years, that age range of 13, 14, when there were certain adults in my life that had a huge impact on me, both positive and negatively. And in part 20, where I talk about my cheerleading coach, I was a sophomore, and how incredibly positive of an influence she was on me as a young woman. I would encourage you to watch the series on abuse. I had a very unstable, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically chaotic childhood, an abusive childhood. Not, let me just mention here, not that I harbor in this day and age any horrible ill will towards my parents, because I truly believe that they did not know any better. I know that they both loved me and my siblings growing up. They were unwell themselves when they got married. Please, like I mentioned, watch the series on abuse for more information and more perspective on my childhood and the way I was raised. This story pertains in particular to that story about my cheerleading coach. And mind you, let me start out by saying, after high school, I never saw that cheerleading coach again. I didn't even think of her. I mean, I thought of her from time to time just because of the experience I had, and I'll recap that experience real quick. So when I was a sophomore in high school, for some strange reason, my school was really hurting for cheerleaders for the JV team. And anyone willing to be a cheerleader could be a cheerleader. There was no tryouts. And there were about 4 or 5 girls on the squad, and they were the stereotypical cheerleader type. They were thin, they were cute, they were popular, but 4 or 5 girls on a cheer squad is just not enough. They needed more. The school was trying to recruit girls in the sophomore class for the JV cheer squad, and maybe 1 or 2 girls decided, yeah, okay, we'll do it, and I was one of the girls. And so there were, if I remember correctly, 6 of us that decided to be on the squad. I thought it would be a fun thing to do. And coinciding with the lack of girls to be on the squad and the efforts that the school had to put into to try to make up a JV cheerleading squad, they also did not have a cheerleading coach. And one of the English teachers volunteered, and as to my knowledge, had no cheerleading experience whatsoever. I think that they needed a body in the position of cheer coach, and they would pretty much take whoever. And this woman had a lot going on. She had, I believe, 3 kids of her own, all in school, and I think a couple of them were young. And I think her kids were involved in sports, and she was a teacher. She worked full-time. Her husband worked full-time. She was very busy. She didn't have a whole lot of time to be coaching cheerleading and going to football games every Friday night and stuff, but she did it. She did it. She did it for the students. She did it for the school. She did it for the team. She did it for the sport. So this woman volunteered to be our cheer coach, and she really, really brought the cheer squad together. We were very different girls. At that age, girls can kind of be real catty and backstabbing and cliquey, and our squad had none of that. Our coach, it could have very easily happened, but I never felt that amongst our squad. I felt very much that we all got along fairly well. And in brief, during that experience, and I talk about this in great detail in the video, one thing that was just absolutely devastating to me is right before the first game, the coach brought out all of the school's uniforms, cheer uniforms, for us to try on and be fitted and make sure that we had the appropriate attire for the first game. And during that cheer practice, I was absolutely humiliated to find that not one of the school's uniforms fit me. And I was by no means a big girl in high school, but I was not petite and small either. And all of the uniforms were petite and small. And so it was humiliating to me to discover that on the first game of the season, what I had to wear was, number one, navy pants, because that was the closest thing I had to our school colors were navy blue and white, and a white turtleneck. Those were the closest things I had to matching the school uniform. And I didn't even have the matching shoes that all the girls had because our family couldn't afford it. I don't begrudge my parents anything having to do with the shoes. They did the best they could. I'm very grateful for what I had, but I really stood out like a sore thumb at that first game. But I smiled and I cheered and I had a great time, but I felt it. I profoundly felt that I was different, very different from all the other girls. And I know now, obviously, as an adult, that I was very different from the other girls. And I am super grateful that I was, and I'm my own person and I'm an original. But at that game, at that age, I was like, ugh, but I persevered. I cheered. I smiled. I was happy. I shared the school spirit with the squad and the crowd and the team and everything like that. And I have fond memories of that cheer experience. I don't have any marked bad experiences or negative experiences about that. But I think it was before the second game. I only went to one game where I did not have a uniform, because the next game, right before the practice before that game, my cheer coach, threw a package wrapped in plastic at me and said, go in the bathroom and try this on. And I was like, what is this? But I went into the bathroom and I ripped open the package, and inside the package was a hand-stitched cheerleading uniform that matched all of the other girls' cheerleading uniforms, the school uniform. And I started crying, and my jaw hit the floor. I was deeply touched by this simple act. Well, it probably wasn't simple for her. She hand stitched it. I'm sure it was a big project for her, and she was under a time constraint, and she volunteered as the coach, so she didn't even have to do this. The fact that she did it, she went above and beyond to do this very, very kind gesture for me and for our squad and for the school, I suspect, just touched me. It was just, I matched the other girls. We all matched. And that for me was a significant moment in my life. And it was definitely one of those things I called out and pointed out in my series on abuse as one of the adults in my past that was hugely impactful to me in a positive way as a young teenager. Fast forward 35, 40 years, however long it's been since I graduated. And I was this past weekend at a show with my art. I happened to look up from whatever I was doing and looked at the vendor booth next to me and looked into the eyes of this woman that coached my JV cheerleading squad back when I was a sophomore in high school. Let me remind you, that was when I was 14 years old and I'm almost 50. So if you think about the timing of that and the fact that I haven't seen her in that many years, and I went, Mrs. I said her name like I was back in school. I just went back in time to my sophomore year in high school. And she looked at me and she stopped for a second and she did this focus expression. And then she said, this is so sweet. She goes, Annie? Because a lot of people, I mean, my name is Ann, but a lot of people call me Annie, Annie Banani, Anna Banana. I mean, I have a lot of nicknames. And she goes, Annie? She recognized me right away. And I said, yes, how are you? Of course. And I flew over to her and she flew towards me and we hugged each other. And she is little. Like I'm 5'11" and she's like maybe 5 foot. So it was just so sweet. And she's an older lady now. She's got to be 80, I would imagine, probably between 75 and 80 now. And she's just this little tiny thing. And I gave her a big hug. She gave me a big hug. In fact, she hugged me multiple times throughout our conversation. We started to talk and it was really busy at my market and we were just blah, 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 blah. And all these people were around and everybody was talking. It was very hard to catch up. But one of the first things that came out of her mouth, and this was what impacted me so deeply that I couldn't even grasp the profound effect that it had on me until later in the day when I was retelling the story to my husband, and I all of a sudden, quite unexpectedly, started sobbing as I was retelling the story to him because it had struck me that deeply. And here's what she said to me. She said, oh my gosh, Annie, remember when I sewed you that uniform? And I said, oh my gosh, yes. I told her, I said, just a couple weeks ago for a public audience, that's you guys, was telling that story about you sewing that uniform for me and how profoundly positive, I'm using that word profound a lot in this video. I'll try to be creative with some different words here, but I can't, that's the one that stuck in my head. Anyway, and how deeply that impacted me in a positive way and how much detail I remember about that entire season and what I experienced and what a positive light you were to me during that time of my life. And she started to get tears in her eyes and she goes, oh my gosh, Annie, you wouldn't believe what hell I caught from the athletic director, this other guy that when I was in high school, I had no opinion of him, really. I didn't know the guy. I was not big into athletics. If you've not picked up on that already, I was never a competitive person. I have never been a competitive person in my life. Of course, as you know, if you watch the abuse series, you know that, I was a very lost young woman. I was a very lost young girl. So growing up, running into this positive influence, this impactful woman from my past was so touching. And then to hear her say that she caught hell from the athletic director for sewing me a uniform. Here's what's so phenomenal though. And I'm not sure if you picked up on this little tidbit or not, but basically she got in trouble from her boss, the athletic director, for sewing me a uniform for cheerleading. And she stood up to him and she took a stand and she said, no, that's not right. That's not okay that you're giving me a hard time. This girl, me, needs a uniform and her uniform needs to match the squad and she needs to feel like she's part of this and she is part of this. And she stitched me a uniform and stood up to her boss and stood for what was right. And I could not thank her more. I can't even imagine how many other students, and this is the realization I had. I cannot even imagine, I'm just one person, right? How many hundreds of students did she impact in a positive way over the years with her heart and her standing up for what's right and her commitment and her perseverance towards being the light for someone else, when the majority of people and probably a lot of her peers were being the darkness for so many children. She was the light for me for sure. She had no idea. And I also was so grateful to have the opportunity this weekend to express to her my gratitude for being such a positive influence in my life when I was a young girl, and she could not believe it. She got tears in her eyes. Again, she must have got tears in her eyes probably 3 times. It was like, and then she kept hugging me, and she said that she lost her son this year, who was many years younger than me. I want to say when I was a sophomore in high school, he might have been like in 7th grade, 6th grade or something like that. And he died this year due to alcoholism. And my heart just ached for her while I was talking to her. And it was, like I said, the environment was not conducive to really connecting at all. But because I was just so busy and we were trying to talk, but there were all these other people around, and, I was trying to run my market, and she actually asked for my card. I said, yes, please, let's do breakfast or get coffee or something like that, because I really want to reconnect with her again and ask her more questions and get more information, if possible, about how that whole thing came to be about the cheer uniform that she sewed for me. But rest assured, I can tell you one thing. This woman was a huge impact in my life. I'm sure she was a huge impact in many other students' lives. Probably a huge impact in other adults' lives as well, as far as being a positive influence and sharing joy and love and kindness and support to others. And I have to say that running into her and being able to share that gratitude with her meant the world to me after not seeing her for 35, 37 years or however long it's been. And it is astounding to me that the athletic director, which was a paid position, was such a jackass about the sewn uniform. So here's the lesson in all this. Let's all be cheer coaches, right? Let's do the volunteer positions and share our light with the world and be positive influencers to others out there. Let's not be the paid athletic director and chastise others for doing good and sharing joy and kindness and support to others. Thanks so much for joining me tonight, guys. I hope you are having an awesome week. Take care of you.